Okay. Hello, everyone. How's it going? Thank you for coming through. My name's Lowell, for those that don't know. Joel helped me put this together. I think this is really amazing. I've never been a part of something like this before where we have all of Australia's leaders and New Zealand's leaders as well in the one place. So I think this is quite the milestone for a lot of us here. Um, and yeah, uh, I hope that you guys gain a lot from this discussion, that everyone here benefits and like it expands their mind and are able to have clarity and understanding for the actions in the future. The reason we put this together was, of course, our whole world was shook with the how do you say the announcement of uh, not using the word urban from our our friends in the States. And so I brought together the Melbourne community to have a chat, just to kind of like see where everyone is at. And then Joel said that, what do you call that? Said maybe he could get Arnel to talk. So then he called Arnel, and Arnel said, "Why don't you get the whole continent?" So that's why we're all here. We're really thankful that Arnel can come here and talk. Uh, he's here to share his insight. More so to kind of share his experience and for us to kind of find our own solutions with this whole situation. What's going to happen is we're going to do, Arnel's going to share with us a talk. I've provided him some questions, hopefully that will kind of dispel a lot of our confusions and questions already, but then which will be led with a Q&A for anyone that wants to do provide any specific questions. Just a little background check for Arnel, for those that don't know who Arnel is. Let me just get my list here. It's quite a lengthy bio, so I had to like bring it down. He is a man of great insight in both our choreography world and hip hop dance. He's the founder of Cabo Modern, a member of Kinjaz, president of Culture Shock International, and he empowers many dancers around the world with his roots before branches, teachings, and leadership tools for dance leaders. So I feel really honored and just appreciative that he's come here to share his time with us. And yeah, let's enter this with a beginner's mind. Keep ourselves open. I'm sure we have a lot of opinions and thoughts on the matter. But I hope that during this time, especially when Arnel speaks, that we can allow our opinions and thoughts to be fluid and expand. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming through and believing in what we do. I feel like what we do is really dope. So yeah, just some house rules. Let's keep ourselves muted just so that we can hear Arnel. And I'll speak more in regards to how the Q&A is going to work when the Q&A hits. But yeah, let's enjoy today. I feel like we can leave today with feeling great, feeling energized, and hopefully looking forward to our future for our communities and cultures. So yeah, I'll probably leave it to Arnel now. You may unmute yourself, brother.
What's going on?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you so much again, Brother Joel and Lowell, for organizing this, and so much love and respect to all of you brilliant leaders for creating this opportunity to share this space together. My goal is to just shed some light on what's been going on over here, some history also on the community here, and collaborate with you guys and encourage your guys' solutions that you guys will create moving forward. I really believe in solution-based conversation. So I'll share, but the goal again is to arrive in the direction of finding solutions that hopefully will work best for your brilliant dance community. I've been to both Australia and New Zealand, and the community, both of your communities are two of my favorite communities in the world. You're brilliant, and there's so much diversity and also what you guys create and what you guys share. So I have no doubt that where you go from here is going to be anything short of amazing. So I think one of the things people are wondering, first of all, nothing is canceled. Okay, like, or we definitely are separating ourselves from a word, but the artistry, the community building, the things that we do, none of that is canceled. None of that is discarded or thrown away. I'm gonna just take us back to kind of the history of the community here in California and how we arrived at that decision literally about a month, maybe about 5 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. So I myself, I was actually born the same year that hip hop was created. So my entire childhood was ciphers and learning in the neighborhoods, in the streets, in the parks, at schools. Hip hop was not in the studios during my whole elementary school, all the way up until high school. But so the connection to dance was very much social, and it was a movement created by the people for the people. So we learned from each other, we exchanged with each other, and if you wanted to experience something, you had to drive to it. There was no social media or anything, so everything was built from the ground up. And I like that. I like the fact that the mirrors that you used were each other. You know what I mean? The energy and the inspiration was from people and not necessarily from videos. So that energy was just raw, and the connection was really, really strong. You know, the positive connection and sometimes the battle connection that, you know, that was also there as well, you know. So when we think about 1992, that's when I started college. There were no competitions. And the culture was changing because I grew up with breaking, locking, popping, but in the early 90s and the late 80s, we had social dances, hip hop freestyle, choreography was coming into the scene. And so you had both the ciphers, the jams, the battles, and then you also had choreography, people coming together to make choreography. And the battles were starting to shift because before, you know, there you have commandos, but it's pretty much just in the moment. But now you're having like garage battles where like dance teams were like battling each other with choreography. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting time. It was hype, and it was, but it also was crazy because when we think about history, there's also a lot of social unrest. So it was crazy that this party dance scene was coming up, but gangs were back on a rise again because with the hip hop era of 70s, 80s, and 90s, the power of crew was so strong that it brought the gang violence down because hip hop was the voice of the people. Like, you know what I mean? You didn't have to have money to be a part of hip hop. You just had to be, you know, willing. You had to like just have a love for one of the four elements, and then you can join a crew. And so crew was strong. But when the party dance era started and this whole like these like dance crews were battling each other in the garages and at the parties, it was a shift from crew being the thing to be and dance groups being the next thing to be. So like the kind of the end of an era and the birth of another. And so gang violence was actually going up. So it was a really crazy time because that's the era of like Straight Outta Compton, you know, like that movie where like gangsta music was going up because at the same time as party dance, R&B music was also thriving. So it's an interesting time. And I just remember feeling like bummed out that like my cousins who were saved by b-boy and poppin' crews were now going back to gangs and dying on the streets. So when I got to college, I was like, we need to start it up again, you know? And so I joined the Filipino club, and we had a culture night. And for our culture night, it was the Filipino American culture night. Since I knew that Pinoys and Pinays, like Filipinos, were all up in hip hop culture, I felt like we needed also a modern section in addition to the traditional sections. And so that was the birth of Kaba Modern. It was we were the Kababayan Modern Dance Suite. And they're like, you guys' name's too long. We're just going to call you Kaba Modern for short. They're like, all right, we'll take it. So we had no idea that just that thought of putting something in a culture night that represented the voice of today's generation would resonate so strong. Because literally in 1 year, it went from just Cabo Modern to 8 moderns, Barkada Modern, Samahang Modern. All the Filipino clubs started doing it the very next year. Then the Chinese Association started doing it, Vietnamese, Japanese, Hawaiian Club, all the cultural dance organizations at the clubs started creating their teams, and which was basically their expression of their American experience connected to their identity as an Asian American. But it was never really, when we created these, it was just about like, we just love hip hop and we just wanted to like express like what we were about. It was never about like, oh, I only want it to be Asian or I only want it to be Filipinos, because actually all of these clubs were open to all ethnicities. But as I study like more and I understand like systemic racism more, I realized that systemic racism was like rampant throughout everything we know, and that includes the college systems. So of course there isn't going to be as many like Black brothers and sisters in our clubs, because when we look on campus, I could literally count 10 of them on campus. So when we looked at like, why is it so Asian, it's like part of the reason, the problem was because there isn't enough equality in our college systems to even give them a fighting chance. You know what I mean? So, but the spirit was very much birthed from the spirit of hip hop. You know what I mean? The mentality of peace, love, and unity, and something created by the community for the community. So, although the community, and then we didn't have any place to like perform, because we were just performing at the culture night. We wanted to do more, but the promoters were like, we could make money off of them. So we're gonna throw club competitions, car show competitions. And when we went to these car shows and club competitions, we're like, man, the judges are just like wet t-shirt models and like promoters. And then like, and our stage, we're like 20 people deep, but the stage is like only room for 10 people. This is not ideal. So I was sitting in my room with my roommate, and our roommates were all of our roommates were Cabo Modern people and a DJ, that our DJ for Cabo Modern too. And I was like, man, we need a place where we can express ourselves, where our community can come and enjoy, and where we have judges that actually represent like what we do. And he said, okay, cool. I need a fundraiser for my fraternity. So that was the creation of Vibe. He said, I'm going to call it Vibe. I'm like, oh, sweet. Yeah, let's do it. So that's why Vibe was created. And when Vibe was created, which was 25 years ago, it sprouted just like the way the moderns sprouted. So you create one dance competition, then there's Maxed Out, Bridge, later on HHI, Body Rock, all of that. But the ones that have the longest history in California were Body Rock and Vibe, because those were like literally created by like community leaders. And so that's kind of the spirit of the dance community. It's like whenever there's something missing, we just look and we collaborate and we create it to meet our own needs, because the industry didn't understand what we were doing, and they had a very non-diverse prototype of what the industry is going to look like. So I mean, I grew up my entire life not seeing anyone that looked like me on television at all, so we just said, we're going to create our own industry. We're going to create our own, we're just going to create the events that we think are missing. We're just going to create it ourselves. And all of the beginning of this community, as we're creating events and these dance, we also called ourselves dance families, because we didn't consider ourselves crew, because we weren't necessarily jumping into the battles. But we also didn't consider ourselves dance companies per se, because we were literally practicing in parking garages and wherever there was open space. So if you look at all of the old pictures of all of these dance families, we were practicing outside, which is also kind of cool, because there's a chemistry that you just can't duplicate when you go through that kind of like experience. So it's kind of interesting, because our root was actually always hip hop. You know what I mean? It was never It was never called urban dance at the time. And urban dance is actually not a term that was created by us or anyone we know. Well, what we found out later, well, what was happening is as our community grew, and I joined Culture Shock, and there's a lot of like, in addition to competitions, a lot of like community work and things were being built to meet the needs of the community. And I was really, really big into dance education. So we created a hip hop summit called H4, which is basically a format where, because I felt like dance education was missing, because even though although there were many more choreographers and many more groups, a lot of people didn't understand the foundation that built their choreography. But I also thought the choreography was dope too. So I felt like there needed to be a meeting of all these worlds. And so we created H4 Dance Summit, which basically was, we would take pioneers. So for locking, I would bring in Don Campbell, but then I'd also bring like a newcomer that's like pushing the game as well. And so every hour or every hour and a half, there would be 4 blocks of classes, 4 different styles and 4 different generations throughout the day. So that by the end of the day, you're learning from 4 different generations of dancers. You're going to learn 4 different art forms. And everyone is going to feel connected too, because there is like such a separation between like the new up and coming choreographers and the pioneers who felt like they were forgotten and disrespected, So we were able to build those bridges, and our community was growing really, really fast. And so what happened around the early 2000s is now, we started off with maybe like Cabo Modern and maybe about 5 groups, and then it grew to like over 50, in a span of 10 years, And what was happening was a lot of the generation that grew up, so like Keone, Mari, Shauna Varisto, all of them, they grew up during those beginning foundation years, so they were hip hop kids. But by the time we were passing the mantle to them to kind of now be the leaders of this generation. They were starting to also draw inspiration from modern and contemporary. And also, we know hip hop, even though conceptually hip hop as a culture, you feel like everything is a part of hip hop. There's only 3 art forms that are considered hip hop. Breaking, in terms of dance art forms, breaking, now light feet, and 80s, 90s party dancing. So, and then there's the grooves of hip hop as well. So when you think about outside of that, everything outside of that is something else. Like locking is something else. Popping, boogaloo, tutting, those are something else, right? Crump, that's another amazing art form, right? But the choreography was drawing like derivatives from all these different places, not necessarily just hip hop. So what happened was Shauna Varisto and a lot of them were being criticized by hip hop heads. Now, like opposite of where we started, where it's peace, love, and unity, and hip hop is for everyone, they're saying, you're a sellout, you're not hip hop, you're not even using hip hop music. Like what you're doing is watered down, like you don't belong, you're not a part of, you guys like ruining it for all of us. And because like leaders like Mike Song, Shauna Varisto, Keone and Mari, Bam Martin, like all of these people felt like we don't want to ever disrespect hip hop because like that's our root. We will just call ourselves something else that's out there. So in the studio setting, urban dance was already there. And we're like, okay, that seems safer because they won't like stop what we do. And that can be a term we can use, and it'll be something inclusive where everyone can feel like they belong. You know what I mean? So they did that. And I remember when they made that choice, I was a little bit worried because I said urban means something different to wherever you live. We know that urban in the dictionary means of the city, but every city looks different in every part of the world. You know what I mean? And also the dance isn't always in the city. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's in other like other areas out beyond the city that the people that we're creating. So it's a little confusing, but I love the intention behind going in that direction. So I just noted my concerns, and I said, okay, like, I know the people that are kind of leading this movement or are using urban dance to label what they do are such good people, because they're people I mentored and people that I've seen do amazing, beautiful things like all over the world. They're just such good people, especially like when I think about Sean Evaristo, Keone and Mari, yeah, Anthony Lee, like all of these, they're just such good people. And so we went on, and there's still a lot of like discussion panels where, it was interesting because I remember a time when Buddha Stretch, because I have like utmost reverence for Buddha Stretch and Elite Force, who are literally the pioneers of what we know as hip hop, like social dances and hip hop freestyle. I remember them being like concerned about what was going on the West Coast. And part of that was why I think urban dance even came about, was because they were like, we felt like maybe the East Coast wasn't really liking what was going on the West Coast. But then they appeared on a panel at Body Rock together last year. And Buddha Stretch is very clear, and Link were very clear that they don't think that that is a good term. they don't like the term, and they don't think it effectively. They were encouraging us to just study hip hop and be hip hop, and now going back to where we started from the very, very beginning, before all the people judging were saying, you know what I mean? So it was just super confusing because Keone and Mari were like, we wanted to be a part of hip hop before, but you were saying we weren't hip hop, but now you're saying we're hip hop. You know what I mean? So it was just super confusing. But I talked to Monsell Durden. So Monsell Durden is also a member of Mop Tops, also OG pioneer of hip hop dance. And he explained it to me that the word urban has historical negative connotations in the music industry. And so what happened was, in the music industry, they used the word urban in place of Black, because they didn't feel comfortable giving our Black brothers and sisters the credit for the music they were creating and the art they were creating. So they use the word urban. And so people of that generation feel like when they see that word, it means erasure, like not giving credit, And so when I learned that, I started reading, and I got a bunch of articles, and I'd be glad to like either email them to Lowell and Joel to share with you all. And I just was like, wow, this isn't right. And I realized that my generation didn't know, because we weren't around during that time in history when that was happening, where they were erasing Black credit. You know what I mean? That's actually generation older than me, like maybe people like in their maybe 50s and up. They felt it. And that's why we probably never knew. We were clueless. We had no idea that this word was degrading at all, So when we realized that, yeah, it bothers some people, but it doesn't bother others, we just said we have to be on the right side of history, especially considering the climate here is we're basically unpacking every day. It's like a lot here, and it's all over the world for sure, but the Black Lives Matters movement is very, 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 it's heavy here. We're like unpacking a lot and learning a lot about the systemic racism in our community, how deep it runs, how much we are understanding our privilege and things that we weren't aware of before. But we decided that we had to be on the right side of history. And while we still love what we built, we can't use a term that degrades communities or makes people feel othered, because that's the opposite of what we created the community to be from the beginning. So I hope that makes sense. So discussions will still have to be made as to where we go forward with what was urban dance. The question I always had for Sean and Keone and Anthony and all of them was, does urban dance, what its function was before, describe a culture, or does it describe an art form? Because if it describes a culture, you have to describe what it is and what it isn't that kind of draws the boundaries around what that culture is. If it's an art form, then it needs three things. What is its unique history, what is its vocabulary, and what is its dance foundation, because that's what makes an art form. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. We're like, because some people are like, oh, it's actually a community, it's a culture. And others are like, no, it's an art form, you know? But then it's just difficult because when you compare what, for example, Mari Madrid's choreography or movement is, and you put it next to Mike's song, they're both brilliant, but their foundation is going to be different. Even the derivatives that they pull from are different, right? So if we come up with a new name, I think, and then we go for the direction of naming it as an art form, there's going to be a lot of decisions that have to be made around what that foundation and the vocab is. So it may end up being a culture, or it may end up being a community. You know what I mean? We're not sure yet. But one thing that I myself, even though I'm rooted in hip hop, it's like the community means so much to me. And I, you know, after speaking to so many people, I know people are feeling like homeless, you know what I mean? In terms of like, oh man, that was like what I called my community, or I called my team, or I called my studio. I just want you to be encouraged that like no one word defines everything you are. You know what I mean? Everything you are will still continue, but it's calling us to examine like being thoughtful in terms of like what we call the things that we do. One thing that we need to be super, where I really want to like encourage everyone to move in the direction of, is we need to call what we do art forms. They're not styles. Styles are things that go in and out of fashion, right? Style is like your steez, what you put on anything. So what you put on, the way you dress, what you put on, the way you dance, that's your style. So no two people in this entire conversation that we're sharing have the same style. We all have individual styles because we're all extensions of our unique human lived experience, right? And the art we do extends from that, right? What we do really are art forms. And if we're ever going to put ourselves if we're ever going to decenter all the classic art forms, because I think ballet, jazz, contemporary, modern are super dope. But I also think that popping, whacking, voguing, dance hall, all of those are all dance that should be equal. We need to decentralize these classical art forms. But we're never going to do that if we don't call what we do art forms. Does that make sense? And so to call them art forms, we also have to understand the history. We have to know the unique history, the vocabulary, and the foundation of all the art forms we do. And when I see people teach class, they do one of two things usually. They're either teaching a dance class or they're teaching a choreography class, right? If it's a dance class, then I would expect that they're definitely going to talk about like the quality of the quality of that art form. You're probably going to learn like foundational movement, quality of movement. You're going to probably learn vocabulary, just like what you would if you were to step into a ballet class, right? But for the art form that you're teaching. If you're teaching choreography, that's also dope, but you're really more focusing on like performance or like the details of like executing whatever that person is sharing with you, right? And so I think when we think about classes, like people need to really, first of all, label their class correctly, whether it's a dance class or whether it's a choreography class. But even if they're teaching, if it's a dance class, it's obvious that you're going to talk about what you do as an art form because you're teaching the art form of that dance class. But for choreography classes as well, I can look at a piece, at someone's choreography, whether it's Marty or whether it's Keone or whether it's Bam Martin. Like I can look at it and be like, oh damn, Bam's choreo today is like has derivatives of house, light feet, a little bit of buck crump flavor, and 80s, 90s groups, you know what I mean? So even when we're teaching choreography, we can own it as experts in what we do by also delivering like what our derivatives are, you know what I mean? So I think that's what I would recommend now when people are like feeling like, damn, I don't know what to call myself. I don't know what I do. It's like, no, it's actually, you're like, what you do is brilliant, but what it is it's challenging us to know what are the elements that make your classes or your artistry or what you do unique. It's kind of like when a chef cooks a brilliant dinner, they have to know all the ingredients so well that they can put it together however they want to deliver something to someone that is going to be enjoyable, right? So I feel like as dancers, you know, whether you're doing choreography or you're teaching or you're making an event, you have to just know all the ingredients that that resonate and that matter to you, that you're utilizing to create something. And we're being called to be experts because the level is so high, but I don't think that people out there I don't think they understand how brilliant the pieces of what they do are. And I think if they do know how brilliant it is and how much history and how much vocabulary and foundation it has, they'll be able to own what they do and articulate it to anyone, whether it's a student, whether it's someone interviewing them, whether it's someone trying to criticize what they're doing. It'll go nowhere. It'll always just grow and expand because we're the experts of what we do, you know? So, and I also think, like, I know people have been labeling, I know there's some people in the Philippines that have reached out to me about like, man, I call my studio urban this or urban that. I'm like, well, even on a business like level strategy, would you ever want to box yourself as one particular thing? You know what I mean? Like, you should never be calling your studio just one style, you know what I mean? Or one facet. You know what I mean? Maybe it's time to like all our dance competitions, we never called our dance competitions urban anything or hip hop anything. If you notice that everything we create is like fusion dance competition, you know, vibe dance competition, body rock dance competition, you know, it's not about one style, it's about dance and then creating like the parameters that make that event special. So that's what I always think about people when you think about the studios you create, the dance families or dance teams or dance companies you create. It should never be labeled by one art form or one thing. It should be really the essence and spirit of what you're trying to accomplish. You know what I mean? So I forgot, Lowell, was there anything else that I was supposed to touch upon at the end? I forgot that you wanted me to address. Oh, did you? Oh, I don't know.
Let me see my notes. I was really into your talk just then. I'm pretty sure. I think something I included was where do we as Australia and New Zealand kind of play in the whole global choreography community,
Yeah.
and like what do you suggest from your experience and insight that we could possibly do just to expand how we think?
I know this is going to sound super hella controversial, but when it comes to like art forms created in the US, then yes, the US should like be dictating, you know what I mean? Like, for example, like we can't change like what is punking and whacking. I mean, that's the creators of punking and whacking can only do that, you know what I mean? But I think I would encourage New Zealand and Australia as the leaders of your country to, there's going to be conversations that are going to happen in the US about like where the whole that urban dance was, where it's going to go. But if the conversation takes too long or it's not satisfactory, you really are the stewards of your own ship. You know what I mean? You can make decisions for your country that you see fit, you know? And like, to be honest, as someone that like has been out there, it's like I would love in my lifetime to see new art forms created in different countries. You know what I mean? It's time to decenter the US, to be honest. Like maybe it was the birthplace of hip hop, maybe it was the birthplace of some of these art forms that we love today, but there's so much that like Kiwis can create, you know what I mean, in New Zealand that's unique to Kiwis that we will be like, oh man, I need to travel to New Zealand to train and learn in that because that was an art form created by New Zealand. Same thing with Australia. Damn, you guys are so talented. You know, it's probably about time that the art forms are coming out of Australia as well. You know what I mean? And that you don't necessarily have to wait for what's going on here to move forward with what works for you, you know? But I don't even know. I don't know where it's going to land, to be honest. I'm going to definitely challenge the leaders here to make sure it's well thought out so we don't arrive in a place again where like we're using a word that didn't work for people. I think a lot of things, there's a power in inventing words. Like you look at Crump has no problems in terms of like its name because it's literally just did not exist. You know what I mean? Like they took a word and then they added the meaning to it and everything was built from it because it was created. So I even told Sean and them, I was like, maybe don't find a word that's out there, create a word, you know what I mean? And then people will make it their home because it was truly created. You have control. When you create a word, you truly have control about what its meaning is and what it isn't, you know? So for now, like, I think I told for sure, I gave everyone the advice, if you're worried about your classes as dance educators, I just think you should just be calling it the art form, if it's you're teaching the art form, or you should call it choreography, and then you could call it beginner, intermediate, whatever. And I think like when you call something choreography, you can also feel free to use a word that speaks to your style, right? So like if you, I see Joel's suggestion. Okay. Yeah. So like, for example, I've seen like people use like fem advanced choreography or, you know, fem choreography advanced, you know what I mean? So like you can kind of pick something if you feel like you want to throw your style to it and call it, you know, choreography class. I think that's a good direction to go in. And then if you're teaching like popping, boogaloo, or, you know, whacking or locking, you can just call it that, you know? So, yeah, I hear what you're saying, Gina.
Sorry, I think I don't know if my thing is working. Oh, wait, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah. I
Sorry,
can't see you, but I can hear you.
okay. I think like for people who aren't like really emphasizing a specific style, like for us to give ourselves a name, sometimes I think it'll like box us in, and then it might interrupt like us evolving and trying to change that style up. But I
Yeah,
understand what you're saying in terms of like, if we don't have a name, I think for people who are established, it's kind of fine because you've like developed that kind of name. But for the coming generations, it's like there might not be like a label or something to kind of help for them to train in whatever it is that we do right now.
yeah. I just think like, I think, and this is another controversial thing, is like, I think if people focus all their training on choreography, they're going to have a hard time because choreography is so many different things. Like Gina said, it doesn't fit into a box. But if you like someone's style, like that they teach, you know what I mean? Then you're going to like find out what are the elements that makes that person dope, what art forms make their choreography. And then from that choreography, you can build on the building blocks that to find your own voice. And experimental, that's like oh, Shira's here. What's up, man? Experimental, it's so interesting because before urban dance, some of the words that were out there.
What up?
What's up, man? So good to see you. Experimental was one of the ones that was out there. There was experimental. Fusion was another one. People were using fusion choreo, fusion freestyle. Like there were a lot of words that existed before too. So I just feel like if you go in a direction of calling it something, just I would really just make sure that there isn't any social context that could make it difficult for you to call it that, you know. But I think choreography, I think like Gina said, like a lot of people who are established, you can just say your name and choreography and people know what to expect. It's really the people that are kind of like building their name that it's hard. But again, I would like urge you to still take choreography classes, but when you take choreography classes, find out what it is about that choreography that you like, and then ask the instructor, like, what was your training? Like, what art forms did you train in? So then maybe it'll spark you in your journey towards creating your art, creating your style. You know, I think that's the direction that we probably need to go in for now, you know.
Hey, Arnel.
Mm-hmm.
Jackie, I'm from New Zealand and I'm a dance educator. I'm really interested in everything that you've got to say, but I just have a little bit of a problem with the word choreography, because choreography is actually the art of making dance. And I feel that just using the term choreography presupposes that people are going to be creative. And I think that the fundamental problem that we have is a lack of education. In New Zealand, we are very lucky that we have a lot of people that are in our community that are also really well educated and are teaching in schools. And for that, they're required to have, they've got to have the knowledge. You know, I mean, I teach dance history, for example. So you can't go into a class and say we're going to do a choreography without giving them those things that you're saying, you know, saying, look, this is inspired by some modern dance and it's fused with this or that. And we have a whole generation that are like that. Unfortunately, in the public sector, that's not the same, because the teachers aren't required to be qualified. A lot of them will set up just on the basis of, you know, having been a student themselves. And choreography for them often, if you go to a jazz studio, it's got nothing to do with creation. It's about teaching codified steps and putting them to a piece of music. In the education industry, we're trying to get people to understand that choreography is an art form that comes from you absorbing the knowledge that you have of different things and making conscious decisions to be able to put those together. I was really interested because this whole urban thing was a very, really resonated with me. And I have to say, when I first saw it and said, whoa, we can't use that, I went, well, hold on, we can't use this and we can't use that. Because, you know, as you rightly said, the word urban does originally mean coming from the city, and it was used originally, as you said, for the Black music movement. But it's become so much more, and most of the people that I have come, they've got some education, calling it urban, are basically doing it on the basis of them not teaching a pure hip-hop form, but maybe using elements of that fused largely with, you know, the big player I feel in all this now is really modern contemporary dance. I mean, I feel today's hip-hop is actually the contemporary or modern dance of today's youth. So my concern is that, not that we don't respect the terminology, but the fact is that if we start encouraging people just to use the term choreography without the wider education that choreography means you applying your own art and taking the elements, then we open up this thing where they say, oh, well, everybody can use choreography, but it's actually something on its own. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I just feel that the big thing here is about education, that the number one thing that we need to absolutely push for in all our communities is that they don't teach anything, be it ballet, jazz, contemporary, tap dance, any form of dance, without having without also giving students the context of where it came from. And one of those contexts that I feel is really important is that there's a funny old saying that you can't patent a pas de bourrée, which means that, you know, regardless of the roots of all our dance forms, while we have this enormous challenge and need to ensure that we respect and that we honor the roots and we educate our kids, we've also got a situation where everything is so inextricably linked with different facets. I mean, we even see it now in cultural dance. Cultural dance has absorbed some of the elements that it's seen of other dance forms. Tap dancing, I teach that the roots of tap dancing came from when in 1739 they banned the drums from the saves so that they had to use their bodies. But it wouldn't have become a dance form if the African Americans hadn't also been living with the Irish in their wooden shoes. So we've got this situation where we've got this huge meld of cultures that have informed so much of what so much of what we're doing now. So my question to you is, I'm wondering if that should be the platform that we really try and encourage all our communities, is to encourage leaders in our community to provide relevant history and context to all our community teachers and practitioners, so that we can ensure that no matter how that they want to improve their artistic expression, that they are absolutely understanding of what the context is and how things started.
Absolutely. Like, in order to be a good choreographer, you have to be a good dancer. You know what I mean? And you can't teach choreography classes if you can't even teach a dance class, you know what I mean? And you don't have the history and the roots. So, and I think like that's what I find concerning is when I go teach at a camp and I see it's all choreography and I don't see any dance classes at all. You know, that means that there's going to be a lot of performance and a lot of, you know what I mean? But there isn't going to be that dance knowledge that I think is necessary for us to preserve the culture and the brilliance of what we do forever, you know? Here in California, we started noticing that phenomenon, like it was very concerning. Like about 10 years ago, we were like, man, no one knows history anymore. And so people started, I started teaching my roots before branches, and other leaders were bringing out pioneers and spending time learning the roots and going back to basics again, you know, because, and these are like all things that the more we know, the more empowered we are to create, you know? And so I think for every art form, like even in New Zealand, and I'm like, wow, that they're just so talented, and Australia is so talented. But sometimes when I look at sets, it has the same 4 art forms. And I'm like, but I know there's dancers out there that are doing more than that, you know? And it's not being reflected in the competition scene maybe, but I know it's out there because I've been at the jams and I've seen the other expressions. And so maybe that education that you're talking about needs to be in so many art forms that we see the artistry starting to diversify, you know?
Can I add one thought on this?
Maybe like a lot of the dance educators that you're talking about who are so committed to that need more opportunities to connect with the community, you know, and that will depend on the organizers, you know what I mean? The community organizers. And right now we're on a reset, which I think is an opportunity here in California about looking at what's missing and creating it now, you know what I mean? Like, cause we can't wait for any industry to create it for us. If there's something in the community missing, then it just takes like-minded people to come together to meet the need of the community. Because the talent is definitely there. And I know enough, there's a lot of people in this chat that I'm looking as I'm scanning the pages that I know, that I'm like, wow, this person they're leaders of communities are here, you know? And so I think it just requires collaboration and vision to like bring that education to the forefront. Because I think everything will benefit if the dance education on the history of the art forms becomes even stronger, we're going to have new artistry that'll even have more soul and substance, because it'll be connected to the social movements and the essence that the art forms were created from. So yeah.
Can I add something to this thought, Arnel? Is that all right?
Absolutely.
So as I guess, so I just trying to learn, be a student of a lot of these styles now for about 15 years, and extending from the sort of, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, the dance educator in New Zealand.
Jackie?
Yeah. So continuing from Jackie's thoughts. So I talk to people in the classical world a lot as well, and we exchange ideas about hip hop, and there's a lot of, it's really difficult. Like we talk about, people need to get educated, but it's really hard because that education is not always easy to come by. And often it's different. You talk to 3 different people, you'll get 3 different ideas. So, it's not as easy, I think, as just saying people need to get educated. I think we need to take a step back from that and say, there needs to be a systematized way of educating people created before we educate people. See, right now, I think the thing is, even the creators themselves contradict each other. So the thing is, that's not necessarily bad, because those histories might all be true. But the thing is, there seems to be, from what I can understand, there seems to be some sort of general accepted core basis for each of these styles, each of these contexts. So I think if there can be some sort of created, even go through the academic world and create it, make it official, but create sort of an accepted general way, a form for each of these art forms, and then understand that there are different individual experiences, then, if we are as educators to continue educating people, there is an understood consensus for what that education is. Because even doing it 15 years, like for 15 years now, I'll talk to another OG, an originator or something, and they'll just say, no, that's flat out wrong. And then I say, hang on, but that guy over there told me this was right. Now I have to rethink how I teach. And it's just, too hard basket. I'm just going to go over here and do this over there.
It's really hard because you're right. Like the pioneers, you're right. Depending on the art form, because I'm going to say certain art forms are very solid. There are certain art forms where that history is pretty consistent throughout. But like the popping umbrella, like popping, boogaloo.
But locking too. I've experienced in locking as well.
Yeah. I feel like the funk styles have a hard time because a lot of the OGs like argue with each other. And trust me, I know, because I've tried to arrange panels here with them in person, and I've had individual discussions with a lot of them, and there are art forms like punkin' and whacking where it's pretty solid because we still have an originator, you know what I mean? And like house is another one that's very like, the histories are very confusing because a lot of the pioneers of house is also disagree. And I also think it varies depending on it varies. Everyone's story has importance, but the lens that a pioneer, the lens can vary, you know what I mean, depending on their experience. But right now, I think it sucks that we're in a COVID time, but it is an opportunity for us to connect with a lot of the pioneers now. We can use platforms like Zoom because everyone's home. So if there's ever a time in history where we can like promote education, you can connect with these pioneers and figure out like, what you feel is like important to you, you know what I mean? Because we know like in the past, like finances and resources is limited because it costs so much to fly just one person to Australia or one person to New Zealand, right? But right now the fact is like all of these pioneers, and it's not only the creators and pioneers, there's also progressors who also are the now of the movement, moving it forward, that you guys can connect with online now. Like for punkin' and whacking, you could easily get a Zoom going with Victor Manuel, you know what I mean? Like the OG punker, or you know what I mean? Because all of them are home. Or if you wanted to know about Boogaloo, you can easily hit up Boogaloo Sam. Or for locking, any pioneer that you wanted to learn their take on locking from, they're like a click away. And So I encourage like communities there that like we think about like the artistry and the things that that are a part of your studio or your team, and think about all the art forms that you study and you learn, and maybe now is a time to create Zoom talks like this with those pioneers, since you have access to them. They're all home right now, you know, to understand like why was it created, what's your history, your take on the history, you know. And then as you build and grow, you'll have it from their mouths themselves. And we're very lucky that a lot of our pioneers are still here, but we have lost some, you know, like Don Campbell is gone, and Tyrone Proctor, you know, also passed away. So we should be taking advantage now, especially the dance educators, of like examining what your choreography, your artistry, your dance education looks like, and now like prioritizing that time for education for all the people you serve.
Yeah.
You know, I think now is a very opportune time to do that.
Cool. Yes. I think we've gotten the Q&A going. Yeah. If anyone has any questions, I feel we'll use the rest of the time of 30 minutes to kind of continue this Q&A. I feel like there's a lot of good topics here, especially from our leaders as well with their insights. So if you have a question, chuck it up in the chat so we don't just all just like start unmuting. But yeah, we'll address as many as we can within the time limit. So if anyone has a question.
And like, I also want to put it out there that I'm passionate about history and amplifying voices of the pioneers. So if there's an art form that you're very curious about, just feel free to hit me up anytime, and I will gladly like connect you, you know, because I think we all need to help each other out. You know what I mean? So if there's any resources I have, I would gladly like point you in the right direction if I don't know, to somebody that might know. And if there's any pioneer I know, I would gladly connect you, you know, because I want us all to grow together. So just let me know.
Right on. So would anyone like to ask a question? Joel.
Just to Arnel, just to clarify, what are you guys doing in your own, you know, SoCal community in terms of the name? What are you doing with the name Urban, or are you changing it, or what are you guys doing?
We're right now, everyone is like, if you notice, like even our online classes, everyone has really moved to just naming their classes intermediate, advanced, beginner, and then their art form, you know what I mean? Or they're labeling it choreography or dance. You know, that's kind of where we are right now in terms of labeling. But a meeting is kind of probably be held in the next month or so to kind of discuss next steps about what that name is, urban dances, like what is served, and what will it be called in the future. And again, because I'm rooted in, like, I never used urban dance to describe anything I do, because that's not my movement. It's never been, you know? So I'm just going to serve as a guide, you know, to help facilitate what they come up with. Because what I teach is it's hip hop and locking. So and I kind of support them in the direction of finding what that next term will be if they try to find something that's going to be a hub for the artistry that they do. But in the meantime, everyone's just calling their classes the actual art form, or they're calling it choreography if that's what their goal is to master, you know, their artistic choreography.
Thanks, Arnel.
Mm-hmm.
One who wants to ask something? Yes, Arna.
Oh, Arna is actually, so I'm really passionate about teaching leadership right now, and Arna is actually one of the newest members of my leadership tools for the dance leader. So it's good to connect with you here, Arna. I think
Thanks,
actually
John.
this one is going to have Arna, Gina, and Chris. So, yep.
Awesome. I just wanted to know, in the States with that current group and that current discussion, is there any discussion about, I guess, how will that evolve to kind of soak through the rest of the dance community outside of the current communities? Like I always think about you know, just sort of your private dance schools that are all around the country, and all those dance competitions that so I use this word that no one else does. It's called dancey dance. So you either have like your dance crew comps or your dancey dance comps, which is all the other art forms. But yeah, because like they're like, you know, they label their section as hip hop, and 9 times out of 10, if you ever go to those comps, you know, to support your students for solos or whatnot, you just know that it's not in any form connected to hip hop whatsoever. But they sort of are kind of, I guess, their own sort of dance world. Like we're all quite separated at various times, and sometimes I feel like if I've ever spoken up in those worlds, I've sometimes felt shut down because it's sort of this institutionalized, you know, we've been here for decades, don't talk to us. And but it's quite important to me that, I guess, the strength in us coming together, that this can soak through the rest of the dance community, and be able to provide insight and education, so the ones that are really connected about, yeah, providing that education moving forward can be heard and not sort of brushed aside because it's just the hip hop dancers or choreo dancers or whatnot. I'm just kind of curious, are there any conversations over at your end about, yeah, how that's going to translate on a broader spectrum?
Well, we had that problem here because there were competition. That was our problem before, is there were a lot of people not from the hip hop culture calling everything hip hop. So what we had to do was, we were like, well, some people tried to penetrate the system and get into those competitions and be judges for them and try to educate from within. But when we realized that there wasn't going to be cultural changes, and because they were more interested in profiteering than actual doing the right thing, that's why we had to create our own events. And our events ended up becoming bigger anyways with time, you know, because, so I think it's two ways. Like, you either have to try to work from within the organization and see if you can inform change within those systems. But if you feel, Arna, that you're being shut down, what that really is opening you up to the fact that there's something missing that you can provide on your own. And you need to align yourself with other people like yourself. And it's hard because sometimes we're like, man, I don't have the resources. Like I actually wouldn't be able to create things by myself. I have to collaborate with someone who's really good with marketing and someone that has the finances or whatever. But at some point, if there's something missing, it's like, that means that it's an opportunity to create it. And it might take some building, but in the end, you'll get exactly what you want because you have control over the culture, you know, the construct of it. So I've tried to work within certain systems to like protect dancers that I care about, and sometimes it works and sometimes it just really doesn't. So I think that's what I would like suggest. And in terms of like what happens in the US and how it translates over there, I think meetings like this for your community is important to decide. Like the Australia dancers and the New Zealand dance leaders, you control what you guys are going to adopt and not adopt. Just because like we decided to go in a direction does not mean that you guys have to just do whatever we're doing. You know what I mean? So I think like just creating space, shared space like this where your leaders can come together is important, so that you can decide, is the decision that the US made, does that fit what we do? Does that like feel okay with us? Because and then decide, make an informed decision. But I would encourage you to never feel like whatever we do here is what you have to do there. I think you guys can be the gatekeepers. You should be the gatekeepers, you know, just like for us, we would never let anyone else tell us what we're going to do. But I would like to see globally, like, I mean, this sounds weird, but I would just like to decenter the US from being the leaders of everything. You know what I mean? I feel like I would love to see everyone feel empowered to create art forms and create events and create formats that maybe the rest of the world will follow and be inspired by. You know what I mean? So Arno, we're going to get into it in the leadership class for sure. But your ideas that are kind of going in your head, I want to definitely hear those and see if we can develop those further. Because I think what you're talking about in those systems maybe can't be fixed, and maybe it's time to create your own, you know, for your community.
Zoe?
Hi, everyone. Anna, I just wanted to follow up on that because the whole time I've listened to this chat and taken so many notes, I just kept thinking like how grateful I was to have you as a hip hop teacher at full time. And for those who I don't know, I didn't grow up, I grew up doing jazz and tap and contemporary, right? And then when I went to full time, I was always so confused with hip hop because it was like, I was like, hold up, what is going on here? There is no consistency. But then being like 12 years out of full time now, realizing that the education also needs to come down into the student of you need to say no to jobs. You need to say no to teaching and go, I'm not ready to be a teacher. I still need to learn. And we need to stop encouraging that if somebody is famous online does not mean they are reputable or knowledgeable, right? And like, this is something that kind of like annoys me. And I feel like I've, Anna, as well battled, but from like a different side from you, if that makes sense. But what I want to pose to this group of people here in Australia, I've flicked through and there's quite a few people here that are quite integrated in full-time courses in Australia. So it's the power of the people, right? So can we get together in this time of isolation and be like, yo, full-time schools. Sarah Ambrose, who runs MAPA, who's also on this chat, she said to me once, people don't know what they don't know, which I think is perfect. And I think in terms of the commercial world of how they churn out dancers in Australia, full-time courses don't know what they don't know. So if we all come together and everyone use their one contact into each institution and be like, yo, with love, you don't know what you don't know. Here are people that know, and here's how to go. Because they don't actually know that they're in the wrong. Does that make sense? Which is annoying. And I'm not trying to like defend them, but they don't know. Does that make sense? So I kind of want to pose to anyone in Australia. There's a lot of people here that teach at those full-time courses. How can we get together and really politely be like, let me just help you with love? Just posing it out there.
I think like amplifying voices is so important, Zoe. So like, I would like encourage, so first of all, we're in a digital world that's just so challenging because back in the day it was all word of mouth and like we all lifted each other up, but now you have social media and it's so tricky. And it's like, we also know that not all good dancers are good teachers, right? Teaching and dancing are two skill sets that have to be developed, right? So even though someone is an extremely talented performer, does not mean like that they are an educator, because to be a teacher and an educator, that's a separate skill set that must be developed. And so I think like what it is, it's like any leaders at institutions and then also people that have a lot of visibility can amplify voices of people that we know are good teachers, right? So if you have visibility and you have a voice, you can, like, I'm gonna like take for example Sora Yang. She used her platform, she has a large following, and she gave over her Instagram and gave it to 4 different instructors for 4 straight days that she knows are good teachers. So she said, oh, I'm gonna have a takeover because I love teaching, but I know these 4 people are maybe not as known, but they're excellent, amazing teachers. So I think it's like the community can help itself. Like you can't wait for the industries, you can't necessarily wait for the institutions all the time, but we can lift each other up, you know, with our voices. And then I would want to also say, if you're someone that's being helped, please remember reciprocation, because I also have helped a lot of people out in the years, and as soon as they blow up, then they forget where they come from as well. You know what I mean? You also need reciprocation. So yes, someone with good visibility, help them up, but then if you're helped up, please show reciprocated support, and then remember to pay it forward when it's your time to pay it forward. So you touched upon it. That's such an important question, Zoe. It's like, if you want quality, you need to promote quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. We have Jacob with a question, and if we have time, because that might be the last one, but if that one goes quick, then we can have one for Jam Republic Sydney. Jacob, you go ahead.
Sweet. Can you guys hear me? Sorry, I'm just on the train right now. travel things. My name is Jacob from New Zealand. Immigrated to Australia last year. Thanks to you guys for hosting the event, first of all. I just want to get your opinion on where you draw the line between where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going. Because like I agree with like a lot of what's been said about like the foundation of certain hip hop styles or other styles that are within that family, but not necessarily hip hop. But as we've been talking, like obviously like what we do develops over time. And as we do that, like we're still trying to honor our roots in that, but at the same time, where does the line get crossed where our history affects or like determines where we are now? So like we can't call ourselves hip hop dancers necessarily with some of our modern stuff. Sorry about the train. But it's still, you know what I mean? Like this crossover of like hip hop foundation still affecting how we use our language or how we teach our dance, but at the same time, it's still not necessarily hip hop. Yeah, I just want to get your opinion of where that line, like where it starts to become something else, even though it's still related and those roots are still within hip hop.
Yeah, that's why, like, for sure. Thank you so much for asking that question, Jacob. I think that's why I think it's not just about only the roots. It's like you should feel empowered to also, if you have derivatives that you feel construct an art form of today, then if you put in the work to decide what the art form is, what is its foundation, what is its vocabulary, it's also about where it is now and moving forward. You should feel empowered to call your art form or something, you know what I mean? Not only, if you feel like you don't have a home, then you can also create an art form. But you do have to do the work. You have to call it, just find out what's its unique history, what's its vocabulary, and you know what's its foundational movements. But that's what I'm saying, is I think that it's calling the current generation to, if they want something different, to now create it, but with thoughtfulness, so that we're not 5 years from now, you create an art form and then all the OG, you guys as the OGs are now arguing with each other. You know what I mean? So like, I think moving forward, like if you feel like what you do has no home, then make the home, because you deserve it. Your generation deserves it if you feel like it needs a home. But be specific. Like if it is going to be an art form, it needs to be just like ballet and all the others. Unique history, vocabulary, and foundation, you know, and you can create that home. And again, let's not make it US centric. If it's something that's like totally New Zealand or totally Australia, then now's the time to create it, you know? Now's the time.
Fresh. Arnel, are you down for one more?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Jam Republic Sydney. Silence. Hello.
So I'm reading I see Jam Republic, they wrote a question, so I'm just reading it.
Oh, they wrote it. All right, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, so like, even like, it's probably in like what we were calling urban choreography before was already like confusing, because people don't know what that is exactly anyways. You know what I mean? What constructs that? So I'm just saying, like, wherever it's moving into the next step, they're gonna have to decide, if there is a new word, what it is and what it isn't, so that moving forward, when you're taking this, let's just call it actually I'm gonna call it Orphans. Okay, we were joking around that we're going to call our new dance art form Orphans, because it's orphan and dance combined together. So we called it Orphans. So let's just say like this new art form is now Orphans. Like we would have to define what Orphans is anyways. You know what I mean? And right now, urban dance as it stood before, there wasn't enough clarity anyways as to what that is and isn't. So it was gonna have to move in a direction anyways. This work was gonna have to be done, because again, like, even though it was, the good thing is that the intent of it was to be inclusive, since it has derivatives from other things outside of hip hop, but it was still not clear enough that people knew exactly what it was. You know what I mean? So movement orphan, morph. Okay. I never heard of that. I'm gonna actually share that one with Keone tomorrow. But yeah, so for now, evolution is necessary no matter what. Like right now, it's because it was never clear enough to begin with. But that's good that we're moving in that direction, because hopefully it'll give people a sense of peace, to kind of know what it is, what it isn't, and then what needs to be created. So, but I just have to say, like, again, like Australia and New Zealand are like two of my favorite dance communities, and I haven't met all of you yet, but I hope I do in the future. And I am opening the lines of communication for myself. If you ever have more questions that we couldn't get to tonight, just please feel free to reach out to me. And if I can help, I will. And if I can't, if I don't know the answer, I can try and point you in the right direction. To someone that might be able to answer it for you. So.
Right on. Thank you so much, Arnel. Thank you to everyone in this conversation for just being a really dope discussion group. We are going to stay in this chat after Arnel leaves, just so that we can chat with one another, reflect, share our thoughts. I feel like we all have a lot to say and share. And just kind of like how Arnel was saying, this is a great time for us to collaborate, share our ideas, and get things rolling. Are we cool to take a group photo?
Yep.
Cool. All right. Put on your best smiles.
Everybody,
I'm gonna Command Shift 3 this.
Everybody that's not on video, like just turn on your video so we can see your beautiful faces.
Yeah. And if you do not want to do that, just your beautiful name will do. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right, page 2. 1, 2, 3. I'm smiling like I'm on page 2. And page 3. 1, 2. Thank you so much, Arnel. Thank you everyone for coming through. I hope everyone has gained a lot from that. And yeah, Arnel, do you want to kind of share where we can kind of contact you, or just some quick places where you'll be in the future that we could potentially see you? And yeah.
Yeah, so my Instagram is just my name, Arnel Calvario. I'm pretty active on there. You can also reach me by email. It's just arnel@kinjas.com. I teach 2 courses right now, leadership tools for the dance leader. My July is actually already full. So July is closed, but August is open. Like I said, Arna, I think, is in my July. Arna and Gina are actually in my July. Lowell, I actually am confirming you for my August. So I haven't emailed you yet, but you're confirmed for August. And Joel and Ken just finished the June one. So that's a rich opportunity if you're interested in just kind of learning leadership skills on communication, mission statement development, managing group dynamics, and self-care. That's kind of what we cover in my course. But I also teach Roots Before Branches, which is a history class from the 1920s up to today, just from movement to art form. And I like teaching it specifically to groups, like dance companies, like specifically, but I'm going to be doing some ones as well. So if that's something you're interested in, it comes with like a 16-page handout, and it involves video and dancing, even through Zoom. So if you're interested in that, you can email me and we can see if we can set something up for that. But those are all the things that I'm like committed to right now during this COVID time. It's like just trying to share as much education, but also support, because I think leaders need a lot of support. You're in a position of giving that. If there's anything I can do to support you, you know, I feel you and I'm with you. You know, let's build together.
Right on. Thank you so much, Arnel. Thank you so much, man. Really, really.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Take care, everyone.
Take care, brother.
Arnel for president.
Much love, you guys. Thank you so much.